Hello everyone, I am the Canadian Gaming Penguin. In the last episode of the guide series, we were talking briefly about the HUD, or heads-up display, mostly the minimap and some other things, in addition to the tutorial, and I actually realized that I never actually finished the tutorial. So if you were in Thanalan, and I almost said Gridania, which is what I did when I originally recorded this video, but you would have had Wyman here, except that is only part of the tutorial, so you can see he is not there anymore, and then you have a cutscene that will kind of make you glance over there, and you will see that we need to head over here and speak with Emotes, who is the head Adventurers Guild person for Thanalan. You'll have two different people, or well, different person in Gridania, and you'll have a different person in Limsa. So this happens to be the one for Thanalan, and you'll end up meeting her regardless of whichever city you started in and whatnot. But anyway, so I actually had, yes, as I mentioned just a moment before, originally recorded this, and I was talking for about an hour about the different heads-up display things that I wanted to mention, and well, rather than trying to edit that all, I decided I would try to summarize it, because a lot of that I can go over on a different video with the heads-up or combat-based things. So without any further ado, I'm going to get to that, and then later in this video I will be giving some little tips up to level 15-ish of your starting classes, and I did decide to include Rogue because it is available early on, and it's the only other class apart from Blue Mage that starts at level 1. And I'll get into giving a bit of a beginner's guide tip for the other classes and jobs, etc. at various levels throughout when they become available, so the next one will probably be at level 30 when you've got access to your jobs for your starting classes, etc. And I'll go over into that more when I actually get to that part. Anyway, so the first thing that I mentioned before when I originally recorded this, not that you would know that, is that there are different icons representing the different types of quests. So if you can see, if we open up our journal here, and that's the default J, you will see that there's this little flame ring around this. This means this is a main scenario quest, and you can also see that with this little flame symbol around here. And obviously I have a different main scenario quest than the one that you would have when you first start the game, and after you've completed the tutorial. Your first quest will be from Emotes if you started in Thanalan, or whomever it was that you needed to speak with in Gridania or in Limsa. Anyway, so I still happen to have some quests here. If I load up the map, the default key for map is M, as in money. You'll see here I don't have a main scenario quest anymore here. Originally you would see one over here if you did start in Thanalan, because you would need to attune to this. And I'll be showing a little bit of a clip of that as well, as there's some information in regards to that. Mostly the return button, which you can see is currently on cooldown for me because I just used it. Anyway, so on the map here we can see we have this quest and this quest, and you can see that they have the same kind of icon. These are considered side quests. In addition to that, this one is also a side quest, but however, the difference between those is you can clearly see that there's a different color plus a plus symbol. This type of icon represents that this is unlocking additional content in the game. You don't have to unlock these. These are side quests. These are not important for you to do, and ironically, I had someone pat me on the head the last time I was recording this too. And it still amuses me. Anyway, so if you want to unlock Beast Tribe quests, for example, something that you'll need to do is a train quests in this. Anyways, before I start blabbering on more about that, something else I'd like to mention is the map. As you can see, it is the default M, as I mentioned before. This is also something that you can move around, so you can, yes, it's going to dance across the screen as I also move the map, my bad. And you can also change the transparency of it. You can also hide the map icons, you can change the text size and stuff like that, and that'll be found in your character configuration under the UI settings, so that's user interface settings. Under general, you can see the mob size here, map font size, the mob font size. Oh, yay. You can also have it restore the map when not moving. So as you can see, if I were to move right now with the map open, not the camera, but if I were to move, you would see that it's going transparent. And then as soon as I stop moving, I have it restored so I can see the full map. This is set off by default, so you actually have to turn this on, so by default it's off. You can also change the map font size. So the font size I have currently is 25, or I mean standard, and this is the large, which is way too big for me, so I leave it at standard. You can also change the transparency of the map, so if you didn't want to adjust that at all, and I hit cancel there because I didn't pay attention to the number that it was before. Anyway, so there's that as well. The HUD subdivision, obviously, as you can see, if I hold first of all, on the PC or computer, whatever you're using, I don't know how it brings up in the console, but however you would bring up the start menu, not start menu, the system menu, so you can either click down here, or you can hit the escape key. It'll also bring up this menu as well. As you can see, these are literally exactly the same. The difference obviously is this is showing you the shortcut key, so system configuration is Control K or K. And the system configuration also has some accessibility features that you will possibly want to use. Then there's the other various things as well. The one thing I am going to point out is if you know that you are going to adjust some of these elements, which I will talk about just in a little moment, I know that I'm going to be reducing these to at least 90%. And so I set it by default in the system configuration to always have the UI elements, the user interface elements, to be at least 90% size rather than 100%. That way I don't have to keep adjusting them all the time to at least 90% because I'm almost always going to have them 90% or in some cases lower. So for example, this is 60%, these hotbars down here, and here these are 80%, I believe. And most of everything else is 90%. Some of the stuff I have adjusted because with a Lalafell it's smaller scaled anyway because of how the camera sits. I usually play my here characters, that's the human characters. Anyway, so there's that as well, and there's other things to go through here as well. So that is something you may want to look through as well. Then there's the character configuration screen where you see a lot of things. The hotbar one I will mention briefly here, but I will also be going through this in the heads-up display in just a second. You can see you can adjust your hotbar sizes. So right now I have them by 12 by 1, so that's 12 columns and 1 row, whereas the hotbar 6 here I have as 4 columns and 3 rows, so that's the 4 by 3, and you can see hotbar 6 is right there. And you can see these are unchecked 5 and 7 because I don't have them displayed currently. 5 is up here and 7 is right here, which we'll see in just a second in the heads-up display, which is what I'm going to do right now. So if we bring up the system menu, HUD layout, you will see we have a whole bunch of elements. Well, if you're trying to get yourself more accustomed to what you're seeing, you can use these right here to focus more specifically on some of these things. I'm not going to go into duty, gauge, and whatnot, as I will probably go through that in a combat related video. But you can see here the hotbars. The cross hotbar I just kind of threw up there because I never use it, and truthfully I don't know a whole lot about it. If you do happen to know anything about that, please leave a comment down below and explain to new users or even old users exactly what it is and how it works. You may also find other videos on it as well. I don't personally use it, so I don't know, as I say that already. As you can see, my hotbars here are hotbars 1 through 4, and these are the hotbars that I always use for whatever class or job I'm equipped with or is my active job. So right now I have Gladiator as my active job, so right now you can only see the Gladiator skills. And the reason why I have it spread out as far as I do is like the skills and whatnot is because I know that I'm going to be placing other skills in other places. By default, when you gain a new skill, it'll fill up your first hotbar and then your second hotbar. However, unless of course you have things placed all on your second hotbar, then it'll fill up your hotbar and stuff like that, or first hotbar and stuff like that. And I'm not entirely sure how it works on PS4. I'm assuming it's going to assign the new skill to some sort of button press. And then I have the various other hotbars. I use 8, 9, and 10 for my changing of classes, which I will get through in the next video, or in a little bit while later in this video. Alternatively, if we go back to the basic here, you can also have, yes, that's fine because I didn't do anything. You also have these that you can save. So if this is my regular layout, if I wanted to have a secondary type of layout, I could do that as well. I will be going over some of these things in more details later on in the next video when I talk about target bars and stuff, but you can see here, this target bar here, we have this UI element system settings. It'll be the little gear button that I just clicked on. You can see the element size change, but you can also change it so that there's independently. So then you'll see that there's now 3 different things here. I prefer to have it as all at one. So I'm just going to click cancel there. But if there's ever anything, so if I click on party list, there's UI elements. If I click on the hotbar, there's also this, and you can see we have these changes there as well. There's various, there's at least one other thing. This down here is also one where you can divide it into 3. So just kind of explore around over there. Another thing of note here is if you have these buttons and you don't want to have to load this up all the time, well, literally everything basically has a button icon. So if you wanted to set your keybind, for example, and you want to constantly load that up, well, all you need to do is drag that to your hotbar and have a keybind to that so that you can open up this and go through the different keybinds. And I definitely encourage you to go through this. When I was going through this originally, I actually discovered a new button press that I had no idea was a thing, and so that was especially helpful for me. And as you can see, this is how I have my keys, hotbars set up, and I know that they are control 1, for example, because there's a little C here. I don't know if you can see that. I'll probably zoom in on that through editing. And this one is only a dot, but is the shift 1 key. And then this is Alt 1. And so it might represent the various things that you have. So example, if someone had the letter P as a hotkey for what I have as Control 9, this would have a P there. So anyway, there's also the keybind thing, and I encourage you to go through that. I also have that locked, so I can't remove things. I just unlocked it so that I could. And you'll also notice that when you first start, there's a little arrow, that thingy there. You can turn that up, turn that off in your character configuration. In the hotbar settings in the display, enable hotbar cycle button. As you can see, the arrows are now there. I don't like doing that because sometimes I hit the keys to actually accidentally change that, and I know I'm always going to have hotbars 1 through 4 changed so that I always have them. In the sharing tab also, you'll see that originally by default you'll have all of these as shared, and what it means by sharing them, whenever you change jobs or classes, so for example I'm Paladin right now, if I change to Gladiator, you'd see that these did not change, but these hotbars did change because this now has the Marauder job class, just job skills, etc. And if I change for ninja, for example, now you can see that it's the ninjas, and these bars did not change at all because those are set to be shared. These ones are set 1 through 4 are not shared, which is why they're not selected with the glowy yellow color. That means they are selected. Another thing you'll face throughout your questing is that there will be emotions that you use, or emotes as it's referred to. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can either type in / or wave or greet, there we go. or various other things. If you're on a PS4, obviously you're not going to want to do that. So there is also an emote button. So I found this in the character actions and traits, or the P key by default, in the main commands. And then the social, you'll find emote. So I just drag that down onto, I think I just got rid of my teleport. Whoopsies. You drag that down there and you can place it on there, and then it'll load up the expressions things. And then if you didn't want to do this, so as you can see, if the left wink here, you can also see down at the bottom, it has a backslash or forward slash, I always mix those up, left wink, that you can type in, or if you wanted to, you could drag that down to your hotbar here. So just drag that down there, you can see that. Now if I hit A, Alt equals every single time, it would do this harvest dance. I'm not going to do that. But there's that option as well. And I would recommend doing that for such as the soothe button, or soothe, this one here, because if you're doing some leave quests, which I will discuss in a future video, that way you can have a quick button to press rather than typing it in all the time. Anyway, so that is the emotes there, and I'm just going to find my teleport button back there. There we go. And as you can see, there's various other things here as well that you can add to. The limit break is one you're going to want to pay attention to, and you will first learn about that either when you join a party for the first time, which is either going to be in your first dungeon, and there'll be some pop-up help information about that as well. If you do need a moment to read that, give your party a shout in the chat. Don't literally shout it, but say in your party chat, if you click on that, party chat. Just tell them that you need a second to read some of this help things, or ask them, or even just ask them what the limit break is, because you just had a help thing pop up and trying to explain that and sort of thing. I will be getting into the limit break thing in the next video when I talk about roles and your first dungeon. Anyways, so there's also changing your transparency with the hotbars, just changing the font size in the hotbars. Most of this you can find in your character configuration, so if you do not like how the UI is set up, I do encourage you to go through this. I personally find if I have access to adjusting these things right from the start when I'm trying a new game, I get a better feel for the game, whereas if I'm frustrated with, for example, the keybinds that are default in a game, and I can adjust those, I will adjust those to how I know I would play if I was going to play this game long term. That way I have a better feel for the actual game and not just get angry at how these controls are really stupid. For example, an escape key that should be your how to exit the game, except instead it's like this really obscure key that is not used at any point in any other company that I know of, except for a certain company that I will remain nameless as I stumble there. Anyway, so as I mentioned, the main scenario quest icon, duty information that you will find, as I pointed out before, you can also see this here. So you'll also have a little bit of information right back from the tutorial that tells you about this duty information. So if you click on this, the title of the quest name, as you can see, Fire in the Gloom is the one that I'm currently working on. It'll bring up the journal and it'll give you the description of the quest, the requirements, etc. As you can see, that's for something else. And then it says use the duty finder to enter the Thaumaturge Decroft, so that's a dungeon. And this is the objective of the quest, so if I happen to click on that, it'll bring up the map for me. And in this case, I need to go down there to interact with this thingy, or use the duty finder. I'll get to that in the next video. Anyway, so there was one more thing about the inventory. As you can see, this is how my inventory is. Again, if we open up the character menu here, we have the item system here. So under inventory settings, inventory interface, I have it set to open all. By default, this is the normal one. As you can see, it closed, so I have to reopen it. You'll have 4 different tabs, your crystals and stuff here. This is for crafting purposes, and then your key items will be in there. And then in order to get back to your regular screen, as you can see, this is your key items and you only have one it'll go you back to your crystals because that's the last tab I was on. Then there's also expanded, where it shows you 2 tabs, and then your crystals and your key items are on one screen there as well. I use the open all. That shows me all of these, and then the key items and crystals are on this side, so for whatever reason your key items has 3 different tabs here, and then your crystals there. I prefer to use this method because it's much easier to keep track of all of my items instead of having to click through tabs, so there is ways to do that. Especially when you're dragging items to different things. Anyway, so that is an option as well. You can also change the sort method. So if I hit sort here, you can see all of my things just sorted, and I don't like that, so I'm going to undo the sort there. So I right-clicked and sorted and unsorted. So there's also a feature where you can hide the character names, and I'm not going to bring up the character screen, but if you can see there's people here. Well, if I also hold the X key, you can see their names disappeared, but the NPCs' names disappeared. This is a very handy button when there's an event going, an event or a group of people are clustered in around the NPC that you need to speak to. Both this will help load the actual NPC, so you'll see the NPC, and also you'll be able to click on it, because even if there was a group of people saying, say right around this Botulf guy, I could still right-click and interact with this person, even if there were characters right in front of me, whereas if they were visible, I would have to right-click and hopefully click on the NPC and whatnot. And anyways, in the character configuration, that is under the display name, and you can see right here there's that, the others always NPCs as well, and then the general. I'll leave it to you to actually go through that. And you can also change the time for this. There is also a way to turn off the server that you're on, and that is somewhere in here. I can't remember where. I have no problems with showing my server time. I also have Eorzea time, and this is mostly for crafting, not crafting, and gathering purposes, and that's why I have them available. So without any further ado, because I've been probably blabbering on enough about this already, in summary, I'd say to explore through the character configuration, the system configuration, and the keybinds themselves, just to give you an idea of what to expect in various other things or how to access things. I will go in more detail about the combat-based things in the next video, and as I move towards Western Thanalan here, there is a reason why I want to go here, because I'm going to show you a good way to practice your skills in fights with a stationary opponent, one who also does have an infinite health amount. These things here are, there's different levels of them. I recommend starting with a level 1, because if you do, say for example, a level 80 striking dummy, your attacks are going to miss, and it's going to make it very difficult to try to practice your combinations and that sort of thing, and I'll talk about combinations in the next video. But to begin, you can see this is a level 1 striking dummy, and this is going to be our test dummy, pun intended. There was no pun there. To test those. So in here, this is the one here, and this is in Western Thanalan. We are by the Scorpion Crossing little area just outside of the gates of Sultana in Ulda. In Gridania, the one is, I think it's over here. I honestly forgot to check. And then Lenosa, I honestly don't remember which one it is in Lenosa. But anyway, once you get access to Thanalan, which should be once you reach your envoy of Ulda, or envoy of Gridania, or envoy of Limsa around level 14-ish, I think it is, you'll gain access to these. And so whichever city you find first that has these is probably your best bet. So anyway, I'm going to be using this to demonstrate the different skills that I have for my various classes, starting with our tanks. So Gladiator here, as you can see, is currently level 19. I'm going to try to focus on the first level 15 skills. I will actually go through these as well. So your first skill is your Fast Blade. And then as you can see, there's this little yellow. That means that I have a combination with this skill. As you can see, it also explains that in the description of the Riot Blade skill, a combo action down there with Fast Blade. Well, this is Fast Blade right here, which is why I have them placed together. In addition to that, I also have this Fight or Flight, which increases my physical attack, and then I also have this Rampart, which reduces damage taken. I will be talking about more specifically why these skills are important for roles for tanks in particular, including these skills as well. And even Total Eclipse, which attacks multiple dummies. As you can see, that one is now also attacked. And as you can see, also the striking dummies are increasing their health there. And then you have your tank stances. In this case, Iron Will is the one for Gladiator. Provoke is also another skill, and Shield Lob, and I'll speak more specifically about those skills as to why they're important in the next video, again when I talk about the roles and tanks. But for example, if you read the text here, it says gesture threatening placing yourself at the top of a target's enmity list while gaining additional enmity. And you can also see on the enmity list over here that these two striking dummies are on my enmity list. In the Hollow Novice, it also talks about this briefly as well, which is why I encourage you to do those. But anyway, these are the basic skills, and I have them spaced out for combos, stunning, or interruption, AO skills. So this is my Total Eclipse, delivers an attack with a potency of 120 to all nearby enemies. And you can see the radius is 5 on the top right corner there. And then the various durations and stuff. Now for Marauder, after I finish, of course you have to run away until you're out of combat. That's gonna get annoying fast. With your Marauder here, you have very similar skills to that of the Gladiator, only they are named differently and they act as a different somewhat function. So you can see here, Berserk, rather than increasing your attack for a period of time, this guarantees that all attacks are critical and direct hits, and this is especially helpful with your Overpower skill, which does this. When you have a few opponents in front of you, you see that both are also hit, and this is your AoE skill, and it is extremely helpful to do quite a bit of damage, especially in combination with this when you are attacking multiple opponents at once. And as before with the Gladiator, you'll also see that Heavy Swing here is also a combination with the Maim skill. So as you can see in Maim's description, it has a combo action with Heavy Swing. And again, that is that. And here we have another stun, and we have, we'll eventually have, I believe, the Interrupt as well, because that is a roll action. But my Marauder is only level 17 currently, so that'd be one of the next skills. It also has Provoke, and this defines is its tank stance. It has Tomahawk as a ranged attack, so if I was a distance away, you can see that's the attack there, and a Shield Lob is for Gladiator. I obviously didn't go through that one. Yeah, that's definitely annoying. That's one of the flaws with the striking dummies. I really wish if you just like clicked the ground or something. I'm sure there's a fast way to change it. But anyway, onwards to Conjurer here. You can see he has a assortment of different skills. I am currently level 22. So right now we have 2 attacks. This one originally will be Stone 1. Later upgrades to Stone 2 at level 18. This is the same skill. So if I, for example, loaded up the actions in the whatever, you'll see that Stone is here and Stone 2 is here. If I drag this to my hotbar here, you'll see that it has a Stone 1 symbol, but as soon as it's placed, because I'm level 18, it'll be Stone 2, which is why this is Stone 2 here. When you're in a lower content dungeon or fate, it'll lower it to Stone 1 automatically, so you don't have to worry about not being able to use it. It'll do that automatically. Here we have an arrow skill. This is a dot effect, damage over time, so D-O-T, dot. So as you can see here in the additional effect in the description, it says wind damage over time. So if we open up this here and we use a skill on the striking dummy, we will see this appear, because this happens to be where I have it placed on my target bar thingy. You can see arrow, which is the name of the skill, and the sustained wind damage over time. And you can see there is a timer, and this also tells you that this will last for 18 seconds, and that's the duration there at the bottom. And the potency of this is 30, so it'll be whatever the 30 amount is going to be doing that damage for 18 seconds. In total, I believe it's once every 4 seconds or 2.5 or something like that. So as a Conjurer, you're going to want to use this attack as soon as you can after the tank has obtained aggro, or if you happen to be playing solo, such as I am right now, obviously against a striking dummy, such a scary foe. You want to use that as one of your starting things, because this stone too is a casting weapon, or a casting attack, and while you're waiting to finish your cast, you're still damaging the opponent because you have this damage over time skill. You also have your Cure and your Medica. These are your first two healing abilities. This one is going to cure your opponent, or not opponent. Why would you want to heal your opponent? This is going to heal yourself or your party members or your chocobo that you'll eventually have. And this one is the one that you're going to be using for the most part in your early dungeons. This one is a wide AO healing ability. As you can see, it restores own HP and the HP of all nearby party members. And just to demonstrate, this is the range of it. So basically anybody within that little circle range, kind of the animation shows us, but you can see the radius is 15 yalms, which is about 15 feet-ish game, but yalms, yeah, it's kind of, basically kind of in this radius right here. Kind of the, if we zoom out a little bit here, if you see the animation, you'll see that it is a pretty far distance as well. Then you have your Cure here, and because I'm the only one in this, you'll have your Cure right there. If you wanted to select someone else, you would need to use different keys, and I'll go over that in the next video as well. There is also this skill here, which is one you're going to want to also pay attention to as a healer. It's the Asuna effect, which will remove a detrimental effect. So say, for example, instead of having Asuna on, not Asuna, having arrow on the striking dummy, I actually had it on myself. If I use this skill, it will remove it from me. Now there are some skills, so debuffs as normally is usually referred to, are not able to be removed with Usuna, so that's something that'll be learned. Some of them also have a description if you're not sure of your party members once you see that. If it is something that it will say, sometimes it will say, Asuna can remove this effect, or something like that. You also have this where you can put your striking dummy to sleep. I don't know why you would, but then you'll see that it's sleeping, and you'll see this little thing, and whether or not it's immune to it or not. In this case, it isn't immune to it, so you can see sleep. Overwhelming drowsiness is preventing the execution of action, so it basically kind of puts them to sleep. There are some bosses that this does not work on at all, and this only works for as long as someone doesn't attack it. So if I attack this right now, you can see that the drowsiness completely vanished, even though the time count wasn't away. So if you're in a situation where you're facing a lot of enemies at once and you know you're taking a lot of damage, I encourage you to use this. And a special effect with this is with the Thaumaturge, which I'll get to in a moment. It actually can get all of them asleep in a certain area. Then there's also your Fluid Aura, binds the target. So this target is not able to move until it's attacked again. So you can see the bind has a counter there if it's only bound for a short period of time. But if I attacked it before that, the bind would release as well. You also have Swift Cast here and a Raise. So if one of your party members happen to have a temporary nap on the ground, or they're hugging the floor, aka they died, you have this ability here which resurrects targets to a weakened state. Now this, as you can see, is a cast of 8 seconds. That is a very long period of time, especially in the middle of a fight while you're still needing to heal, which is why I have Swift Cast right beside it. This next spell is cast immediately. So say I had a party member who died, rather than taking 8 seconds to raise them, I would use Swift Cast first and then the raise button, so that the raise would be instantaneous. make sure you've clicked the person first, because I've accidentally used it and totally wasted the Swift cast. Anyways, I'll be talking more about that in the next video. So next up we have Pugilist, and this one is a little more important to be paying attention to for your skills, because there are positionals, and positional means how you're facing your opponent. So right now, if I click on here, you can see this target ring around the opponent. This arrow means that the opponent is facing this way. Well, for the Pugilist and other DPS as well, you have various skills that are good against the rear, or in the case of Pugilist, the flank. And the flank being the side here or here, and the behind is right here. You have less damage when you're facing them. Obviously, when you're playing solo, that's not as big of a deal because you're playing solo. But when you're in a party, you'll either want to be here or here, depending on which skill you're using. So for example, here, we can see that delivers an attack with a potency of 150. Well, that is fine and has a critical damage if dealt from a target's rear. So, we can see that there is a difference there. If we attack here, and then here, we'll also see that we have this as a bonus from attack executed from a target's rear. And then we can see this is a bonus from targeting the opponent's flank, and the flank is the side. Now that is why I have these two skills up here, because they are skills that are from the flank, so I know that these ones are going to be the flank, and there will be another skill up here as well eventually, and there's will be another skill down here for the rear as well. So basically, when you're starting, you want to be at the rear, and depending on if you're using this one or this one, depending on what level you are, you're going to want to use this one, for example, for the rear, and then you're going to want to move over and execute this one, and that is your combination. The Pugilist has, it's technically not a combination because of how this can be executed. So it can be a little more complicated than that, but I do recommend reading which is the flank, which is not, and then positioning those on your hotbars as you prefer so that you know which one is which, and to make it easier for yourself so you know if you need to move before executing the skill. And it's not a big deal if you don't move, you're just limiting how much damage you can do, and as I mentioned in the first video, DPS's job is to do as much damage as possible. And this is one of the mechanics for the Pugilist itself, and this also applies to Monk as well, which is the job for this. Eventually, you will also have this Fists of Earth skill, which reduces the damage taken by 10% and cannot be used with Fists of Fire or Fists of Wind. Those are also different stances, if you will, that are available later on when you level up. This skill here converts a portion of physical damage dealt into HP. So instead of doing a certain amount of physical damage, it'll restore your HP. So you want to, if you're low on health and you're playing solo, by all means use this. If you're in the fight with full health, there's no reason to use this, because instead of doing a physical damage, you're actually reducing your damage when you're using it, because it's converting part of what your damage would be into your health. But if you're at full health, there's like literally no reason to do that. All you're doing is reducing your damage. If you're not on low health and your healer is having difficulty healing you, say you drop down to over less than half, by all means use this. If your healer dies, of course use that. And then you also have the second wind, which will also restore a portion of your HP, your hit points, your health. And then you also have a stun ability as well. And that is Pugilist in a nutshell. One other note, as I'm running away here and hopping up the stairs, you will notice that the Pugilist does not have an AoE ability as of yet. You will need to get in a higher level before you do that, and I forgot to mention this before, but you will actually be able to see all of the Pugilist skills if you open up the actions, and you'll also see all the role actions. So if you want to get ahead of the game and learn what those different skills are before being able to actually apply them, there is that option as well. I Depending on how comfortable you are with your current class, I don't recommend doing this. If you are super comfortable with what you're doing, by all means, go ahead and look at those things and then place them on the hotbar as you prefer, because then that way, as soon as you have it available, you have that skill right on your hotbar. You don't have to take the time to place it or rearrange your hotbar, etc., which is also why I have my skills placed the way that I do. Now moving on to Lancer here. We have our various skills, and I actually forgot to move one over here. So one thing I will note as I just move that skill, when I have the different classes here, as you can see with my Gladiator and my Marauder, almost all the skills that are similar are in the same position. So for my attack bonus skill is here for Gladiator, my attack bonus skill is also here. And you can see Rampart is in the same location. This is because I play all of the different classes with the exception of Summoner, and I'm still working on trying to learn that one because I play Scholar. Anyway, so I try to place them in the similar spots. That way I don't confuse myself. So if I know that Rampart is my Shift 2 key, then I know for all of my my tank classes, so for my Dark Knight and Gunbreaker, which I don't currently have unlocked for this character because I can't, but anyways, I know that Shift 2 is always going to be Rampart. And for Conjurer, and eventually also for the Scholar and then Astrologian, Control 6 is always my Asuna. Control 5 is always my first Medica or large AO skill healing ability. Control 5 is always my regenerating control healing ability that's also an AO. And then 3 is also my regen skill, which obviously you don't have currently. And that'll depend on what it is, various other things. So basically I try to place them in the same spots that I would for other jobs. So the same thing applies with some of my DPS. As you can see, if I have this stun ability, it is always Control 5, and that also goes with my Gladiator and my Paladin, and also Dark Knight and Gunbreaker. But anyway, back to Lancer. You can see we have our True Thrust here, and this is the first skill that you have. And like with the, you don't currently have it, but with the Pugilist, it has a bonus against rear. There is also that with this class as well. You don't have the skill currently. We also have a ranged attack, which is why I have it as Control 5, because that's where I put it for my DPS. We also have this Life Surge, which ensures critical damage for the first weapon skill used while Life Surge is active. So say you're in a combination, rather than using this skill at your first opening skill, use it as your second. So currently I don't have a third combo, and that's usually how high the most combination skills that you have is 1, 2, and 3. We only have 1 and 2 right now, so if I use 1, then I use this skill, and then I use Vorpal Thrust, which is the combination skill to True Thrust here, I will have a bonus of damage, and it'll be a guaranteed critical hit because of this Life Surge skill. We also have Second Wind, not Second Will. I can read. We also have the Leg Sweep, which is a stun ability. And we also have the Bloodbath, and again, it converts a portion of physical damage dealt into HP, so if your HP is at full health, do not use this. You're limiting your damage. Piercing Talon is a ranged skill, so if we move a distance away again, you can see there's quite a bit of a distance. If you can't use the skill, there'll be an X down at the bottom because we're too far away. As you could see, those ones almost immediately went through the X because we were too far away. Once you know you're as close as you can, or as far away as you can, you'll be able to use the skill. And as you can see, these are still like that. This one will be X'd as well, and that's why there was the red numbers as well. Anyway, that is Lancer in a nutshell at the start as well. Next we have Rogue here, if I can switch. There we go. We have a few different skills that are kind of unique to, well, of course they're unique to Rogue, but we have this skill here, Shade Shift creates shadow, so that null damage up to 20% of maximum HP. So 20% of your damage based on your HP will be reduced. This is especially helpful if you want to be a semi-tank in the event that your tank in your party dies, then you can take on some of the extra damage while your healer either revives your tank, or if you're trying to defeat, say you had 1 or 2 enemies left, rather than trying to run away, you can just take on the brunt of that. It also helps being used when you're in battle so that your healer has less people to heal in your party to help reduce damage as well. We also have this unique skill, Hide, which you actually will utilize in one of your class quests. They blend in with your surroundings, making it impossible for most enemies to detect you, but reducing movement speed by 50%. This has no effect on enemies 10 levels higher than your own, or certain enemies with special sight. For example, this will not work on bosses, so there's no point on using it. So if we use this skill, we will see we have this little hint. Unable to be detected. Movement speed is severely reduced. You can kind of increase this by using the sprint button. You can see I'm moving a little bit faster than if I didn't use the sprint. So if you're wondering how I just removed sprint, I right-clicked on this here. And likewise, I can do that with this as well. That is the hide ability. So it's especially helpful if you want to sneak past enemies within those specifications that don't have the special sight, etc. and whatnot. And anyways, we also have a range skill like we do with Lancer here, except this is a throwing daggers, so if we select that, we'll see the throwing daggers there. We also have the skills of Spinning Edge in combination with the Gust Slash. I can totally read. As you can see, that is the Spinning Edge is in the description, as we have an audience apparently. We also have Second Wind. And we also have Leg Sweep, and again we have Bloodbath, and once again, don't use this if you're at full health. We also have this unique skill here called Mug, delivers an attack with a potency of 150, so this is a skill that you're going to want to use periodically, but especially towards the end of a fight, because of the additional effect, increases the chance of additional items being dropped by a target if Mug is dealt before or as the finishing blow. So if it's the second last or the last blow, you want to use this if you can. So timing it right, you may get additional items, hence the description. And unlike with the first two, Pugilist and Lancer, you don't currently have any skills that are better or worse than the rear, etc. as of this moment. We will be moving on to Archer in just a second once there we go. So Archer here. Archer here. Archer here. There we go. Archer here has something similar to the attack damage boost that the Gladiator has. As you can see, increases damage dealt by 10% for 20 seconds. So if we use that, we will increase our damage using our heavy shot and the occasional straight shot when it is available. There's a 20% chance of becoming a straight shot ready, which you'll see right here. We have a certain amount of time to use that before this will, as you can see, there was that, now it's grayed out. So if we continue to use this, 20% chance of this will be able to be used. Otherwise, your other skill to use is this. Be wary when you use this one, it generates aggro. So say this was not an aggressive, this was an aggressive bad guy, it will detect that you're using this skill because you're like kind of pulling in energy before you release it, sort of thing. So you can see before my skill was actually released, it actually detected that. I can't use it again because there's a cooldown. We also have other skills similar to the Bind and Heavy. So this one is a Heavy for a 40% Heavy, and here you can see movement speed is reduced. We also have Foot Graze, binds target, so if you're facing multiple targets and you trying to take down one while the other one is chasing you, you can bind this target for a period of time, and again, if you attack it, it will release the bind as well. So if we use the this here again, the Bloodletter, you see it started to move before that was released. I think because it kind of does like a little bit of damage before it's actually released. Now there's one other skill, like with the arrow with Conjurer, you have a Venomous Bite. This delivers an attack with a potency of 100, but the additional effect is Venom. If you see, we use that. We now have a Toxins are causing damage over time to the striking dummy, that poor dummy. And you'll want to use this periodically throughout your fight, otherwise you're basically spamming your 1 and your occasional 3 and then your straight shot when you're having it available. Don't forget to use this periodically. But as you can see, the Venomous Bite is reducing, so I usually start using it when it's down to at least 5, maybe 10, depending on how busy the fight is. Just so that that keeps going, so it's constantly doing damage over time, because as you can see, if I use it once again, it will restore that Venomous Bite to 30 seconds, so on and so forth. You also have this skill here. Say you're fighting an opponent and you're getting too close, or the opponent's getting too close, well, you have this skill where jumps 10 yalms away from the current target, and it cannot be executed while bound. So if you had the bound this, for example, the foot graze on yourself, you would not be able to execute that. But as you can see, it jumped away. And I can't use it again yet. But anyway, that is the archer in a nutshell. And obviously, as an archer, you don't need to be very close to your target. You can be quite a distance away. As you can see, your range is 25 yalms, 25 yalms, 25 yalms, 25 yalms. This one doesn't have a range, of course, because it's just boosting yourself. 25 yalms, 25 yalms, and then this is, again, second wind for yourself as well. And with Thaumaturge, once we can... oh, we're not out of combat yet. I guess I should have paid attention to that. Thaumaturge here also has ranged skills, and as you can see, I'm level 18. This is 2 of its first AO skills. So to start, this one is a little more complicated at the start in the sense that you have this here to pay attention to with as well. So to start, you have your freeze attack here, and you'll see that this will now have a counter. As you use this, it'll show you this grants Umbral Ice or removes Astral Fire. Well, right now, because I'm using it, I have Astral Ice, and this here will swap the transpose. This one is important for you to know. It will swap Astral Fire with a single Umbral Ice or Umbral Ice with a single Astral Fire. So right now I have Astral or Umbral Ice. If I use transpose, it now switches to the flame one you see here, and when you deals fire damage with a potency of 180, and then again grants Umbral Ice, Astral Fire, or removes Umbral Ice. Sorry, I'm having problems here reading. And so if you see I just use Blizzard there, it's going to remove that as well. The reason why you want to use Transpose is because it'll help you quickly swap between those without losing this bonus, because it also increases your speed when you have this. If we open up the actions and traits here, and the actions display gauge here, the elemental, so I opened up the actions and traits, and then down here display job gauge description, and this is applicable to all the classes and jobs because you will eventually have a job gauge of some sort. The elemental gauge indicates whether you are under the influence of Astral Fire after casting a fire spell, or Umbral Ice after casting a blizzard spell. While under the influence of Astral Fire, all fire spells will have increased potency, but require more MP to cast. While under the influence of Umbral Ice, you will have significantly increased MP recovery. So something with the Thaumaturge, you will need to balance your MP usage. So if I used the Blizzard attack here, I'll have the, what's it called? Umbral Ice. And you'll see my MP is only dropping down by 300-ish because that is the potency, or the cost of MP for this skill. Now if I transpose to the Astral Fire in a second here, you'll see that the 400 cost for the fire and the 200 cost for the thunder, the 800 cost for scathe, and so on and so forth will increase. So if we transpose there, now you can see fire is 1600, and it's 200, 800, 400, and 3000. So as you can see also, the MP is dropping significantly because of that. So when you get down to, say, about right now, I'm only going to have a few hundred, you're going to want to transpose, and you can see almost instantaneously I had an MP increase. So when you balance that, you're going to want to switch between your Umbral Ice and your Astral Fire. In addition to that, I recommend using the Thunder ability as your starting skill, because this will add a damage over time effect of sustaining lightning damage over time, which is what it also says, and this lasts for 18 seconds, and then casting periodically throughout. Your Scathe is an instantaneous skill that you can use, so if your opponent is almost out of health, rather than wasting time trying to cast something, just use Scathe. Now keep in mind that it does cost 800 MP every time you use it. I just realized my hotbar is too far down low, so that's actually hiding that a bit. So you'll want to keep in mind that as well. If you had multiple opponents and you were, say you were under Umbral Ice, sorry, I'm completely forgetting the names of these because I just know what each one is, Fire and Ice. So Ice one right here, you'll have this skill as well. So say you're trying to restore your MP, well you have this skill as well. This is your first AO skill, and as you can see why I'm super close to these, because the damage is done when they're nearby. Your radius is 5 yalms. So if I did this over here, you won't see this as being hit at all, because I'm not hitting them, because they're not within 5 yalms. But as here, you can see that the damage being done is here. So now if I transpose, you can see I've moved away, because the flame here, the fire 2, is a potency of 8 to target and all enemies nearby it, and the radius is 5 yards, but the range is 25 yalms, and this is a range of 0, as you can see. And as you can see, I am out of MP again, so I need to switch. Eventually you'll have other AO skills as well, such as a Thunder 2, which will do Thunder skill against all of them. If you are doing multiple opponents at once, sometimes it's best just to focus on the AO abilities rather than your Thunder ability for each one, because you're going to be slowly casting a skill for each one eventually. So I would recommend, if you can, throw in a Thunder occasionally. For example, while you're waiting for your MP to restore, while you're in combination using your Blizzard too, but do keep in mind to move forward. And the reason why I have them split apart from this, because all my AO skills are going to be here, and all my single use skills are going to be over here. Anyways, so that is the Thaumaturge in a nutshell. I hope that was understandable. Basic thing is you need to watch your MP and to make sure you use the transpose to swap between that. Next we will be speaking about the Arcanist. So the Arcanist, in your first 15 levels or so, you'll have a companion. As you can see, at level 4 you get your first carbuncle. This cute little mouse rat looking thing. I mean, look at that. It's super cute and also very blinding because it's dark outside. Anyway, so you get this one, and as you can see, this skill actually changed. So if I right click on this and say away, you'll see that this skill has changed to Eggy Assault, because I don't have a Eggy or a summoned minion, if you will, to attack. You also get a second one as well. You can see this again changed. If I summon the first one, this also changed. So this one is the one that you're going to want to use predominantly in dungeons because, well, for right now anyway, because it deals damage, wind damage with a potency of 100 when you command it to do so. Keynote is you do need to have your Emerald Carbuncle summoned. You also have your Bio and your Miasma, so this is your dot over time skills as well. Bio will deal unexpected damage over time for 30 seconds. Then you have Miasma, and you can see the Carbuncle is also attacking the striking dummy. Miasma will also deal unsuspecting damage over time. And then if I order Assault 1 Downburst, orders the Emerald Carbuncle to execute Downburst. Downbursts deal wind damage with a potency of 100 to target and all enemies nearby it. So if you are attacking an opponent with the with more than one opponent. Heather, you are going to want to use that occasionally. You also can swap these instantaneously in the fights currently. And this one will actually increase your defensive, so it creates a barrier around you that absorbs damage totaling 30% of your maximum HP. So if you were about to take damage from a skill from a boss, for example, this is now a good time to use this because a lot of your damage will be absorbed through this shield. If we get our Charbuncle to use this skill, we'll see a little shield around us. And we'll see stone wall and invisible yet rock solid barrier is nullifying damage for a portion of time. We'll see the bio and the miasma on this striking dummy as well. And then we'll see this faster skill, which is actually only available until level 18, along with this energy drain. But you'll see that this skill, if target is suffering from a bio or miasma effect inflicted by you, faster potency is increased to 200 for one effect or 300 for both effect. Only applies when the original spells were cast by you. So if you had another Arcanist in your party and they cast these things, then you wouldn't have any bonuses to faster because they were not cast by you. And you'll know if they were cast by you if you just simply cast them again and you see if one appears or one doesn't appear, or you see the timer count change. And you can also see that this gauge here just lowered. So this costs an Aetherflow gauge cost of 1. If I use this skill, it actually restores this. And you can see this has a 30-second cooldown. So you will want to alternate between your casting of your bio and your miasma, and then faster, your energy drain, your summoning of which creatures to use, and you also have a physique skill. This is a somewhat of a healing skill. It's not as potent as a healer's. As you can see, the cure potency is 400, and the cure potency for the Conjurer or other healers is similar to that. Eventually this stays the same, but the Conjurers, etc. kind of scales up depending on their skills. And you also have Swift Cast, and you have Resurrection as well. So this is similar to the Revive as the Conjurer. So if your Conjurer happens to have difficulty reviving some of your party members, and you are the Arcanist, you'll have access to this as well. This will change up when you're Summoner and Scholar, so on and so forth, but as of that moment, that is the skills. I hope that was understandable, and so that is basically your first starting classes. This is probably going to be a very long video as a result. And realizing that I have a quest here, I forgot to mention this before. So when you have your main scenario quest, you'll see it up here, and you'll also see down here there is this little quest thing here. Well, this is because my Arcanist apparently has a quest to do because I reached level 20, and you'll have a quest through levels 1 through 50 every 5 levels. So your first quest will be, your first class quest will be at level 1, then the next class quest will be level 5, level 10, level 15, etc. up until level 50, and then the timing of when you get a quest is different because that's when the expansions kick in, and each expansion only raises the max levels by 10, and the timing of when you have a job quest is slightly different, partly because it also takes quite a bit of time to change to your next levels by that point, but there are numerous ways of increasing your levels that you can do, which I will talk in a different video. But anyway, that is the classes and a bit of introduction of how the classes function and etc. and work in a nutshell, sort of. I will be going more through the roles specifically of what you will want to use, when you want to use them, etc., especially in your dungeons, etc. That will be the next video. I hope you found this helpful, and if you didn't, feel free to hit that dislike button. No, I'm just kidding. If you did find this helpful, please hit that like button. And if you do have any questions or concerns, please feel free to share your question or concern in the comments down below. Anyways, that is it for this one. Thanks for watching!